vanished in the pines, the unsettling mystery. In the summer of 2020, Elara Vance walked alone into the Whispering Peaks National Forest, a seasoned wilderness survivalist seeking peace in a world locked down by fear. 6 days later, hikers stumbled upon her campsite, ripped apart, scattered like something panicked had stormed through. Then came the sightings, a barefoot woman with bruises and blue hair, drifting through the woods, seen again and again, but never twice in the same place. Her car turned up next, wrecked and strangely ransacked, just like her gear. No signs of a struggle. No blood. No Elara. A year passed. The trail went cold. Until a child on a family picnic pointed into the trees and said, "She's dead. Her legs are stuck. And she needs help." What happened to Elara Vance is not just a disappearance, it's a haunting. The air in the Whispering Peaks National Forest hangs thick and silent, heavy with the scent of damp earth and ancient pines. Sunlight struggles to pierce the dense canopy, dappling the forest floor in shifting patterns of light and shadow. It's a place of immense, staggering beauty, but also one of profound isolation, where the sheer scale of the wilderness can swallow sounds whole, leaving only the whisper of the wind through the high branches. It feels untouched, eternal. But even places like this hold secrets, and sometimes, they refuse to give them up. It was here, amidst this imposing grandeur, that a mystery took root in the strange, unsettled summer of 2020, a disappearance so baffling it continues to echo through the shadowed canyons. Her name was Elara Vance. One moment, she was a solitary figure seeking refuge in the vastness. The next, she was simply gone. Vanished. Not just missing, but erased, leaving behind a trail of deeply disturbing questions and clues that seem to mock any attempt at logical explanation. Imagine a campsite, meticulously prepared, suddenly torn apart as if by a localized storm of violence. Picture reported sightings of a woman resembling Elara, dazed and disoriented, appearing like an apparition only to melt back into the trees before help could arrive. These weren't the clean tracks of someone lost, they felt like fragments of a nightmare scattered across the rugged landscape. All of this unfolded against the backdrop of a world holding its breath. The early days of the pandemic had driven millions indoors, fostering a unique kind of global isolation. Was Elara merely seeking escape from that pervasive fear, a deeper solitude in the wild? Or did the world's pause somehow unlock something else, something within her or within the woods themselves? The authorities, seasoned trackers, even search dogs, none could piece together a coherent narrative from the unsettling evidence left behind. The forest guarded its silence. And then, long after the official search had dwindled and hope had begun to fray, came the most chilling twist. An encounter involving a child, too young to invent such detail, whose innocent words painted a picture so terrifying, so specific, it threw the entire investigation into a new, disturbing light. It's a detail that makes the skin crawl, suggesting that perhaps the real mystery wasn't just about where Elara went, but about what she might have become, or what truly found her out there in the deep woods. This story traces the known path, the facts gathered, but it also ventures into those unsettling gaps, the spaces where explanations fail and only the haunting mystery remains. What drives a person to seek such profound isolation? And what happens when the silence of the wilderness answers back in ways no one could ever predict? To understand the baffling events that followed her vanishing, we must first understand the woman who walked willingly into that immense, waiting quiet. To understand the baffling events that followed her vanishing, we must first understand the woman who walked willingly into that immense, waiting quiet. Elara Vance wasn't merely seeking a change of scenery, she was responding to a seismic shift, both in the world around her and deep within her own restless soul. The year 2020 had dawned like any other, but by March, the ground had irrevocably shifted. News crackled with increasing urgency about a novel coronavirus, COVID-19, spreading like wildfire across continents. Then came the formal declaration, a global pandemic. Borders slammed shut. Cities fell silent. Life, as everyone knew it, hit an unprecedented pause button. Remember that time? The eerie quiet of usually bustling streets, the anxious glances exchanged over masks, the sudden shrinking of horizons to the four walls of home. Quarantine wasn't just a recommendation, it became a mandate, a strange, suspended reality. News cycles debated efficacy, politicians argued policy, but for ordinary people, the questions were more fundamental, more personal. How do you find meaning when the world locks down? How do you breathe when fear hangs heavy in the air? It was a time of profound uncertainty, forcing introspection, dredging up old anxieties and, for some, sparking unexpected desires for radical change. It was within this crucible of global anxiety that Elara Vance, 54 years old, found herself profoundly adrift. On the surface, her life in the sun-drenched paradise of Azure Bay, on the idyllic island of Azuria, seemed enviable. Turquoise waters, gentle breezes, postcard perfection. But paradise hadn't quite anchored her. 2 marriages had ended, leaving behind the quiet ache of what might have been, and the path to motherhood had remained untrod. Azuria, beautiful as it was, hadn't truly become home. It felt more like another temporary stop in a life characterized by movement. A nomad at heart, she'd spent much of her adult life bouncing between places, never quite setting down deep roots, always searching for something. Professionally, she navigated the structured world of accounting, a trade that offered stability but perhaps little spark for her true passions. Because beneath the surface of the practical accountant pulsed the heart of a skilled wilderness survivalist. This wasn't a casual hobby, it was a deep-seated calling, honed since childhood. Growing up, she hadn't dreamed of spreadsheets. She'd imagined herself as a park ranger, immersed in the very wildness she understood so instinctively. College had included rigorous wilderness survival courses alongside her accounting studies. She excelled, felt alive in those moments. But life, as it often does, steered her down the more conventional path. 30 years later, the ranger dream was a faded photograph, the accountant reality starkly present. Until the pandemic. That sudden, jarring halt to normal life, the imposed solitude, it didn't just feel like a restriction to Elara. It felt like an opening. A strange, unexpected gift of time and perspective. The restlessness that had simmered beneath the surface for years began to boil. Disappointments, roads not taken, the feeling of life veering off course, all seemed amplified by the global crisis. Was this it? Was this the life she was meant to live? The pandemic pause became a catalyst, forcing a confrontation with these questions. And in that confrontation, the old dream flickered back to life. The call of the wild, the desire to test herself against the elements, to reconnect with that competent, self-reliant woman she knew herself to be deep down, it became irresistible. It wasn't just about seeking solace, it felt more like a reclamation. A chance to strip away the layers of expectation and disappointment and find something essential in the solitude of nature. Maybe she was running from the ghosts of her past, the failed relationships, the unfulfilled dreams. Or perhaps she was running towards a purer, more authentic version of herself, the one who thrived not behind a desk, but under an open sky, reading the language of the forest. The motivation was complex, tangled with years of unspoken yearning and the sudden, stark reality of global upheaval. Her capability was never in doubt. She understood the risks, the demands of self-sufficiency miles from civilization. She knew navigation, shelter building, foraging, first aid. This wasn't a whim, it was a return. So, the decision, when it came, felt both sudden and inevitable. She sold her place in Azure Bay, severing ties with the island paradise that never quite felt like hers. Her destination, Pine Ridge County, a rugged, sparsely populated area nestled against the vast, imposing boundary of the Whispering Peaks National Forest. A place where the wilderness wasn't just a backdrop, it was the main event. She found a small place, unpacked minimally, her focus already shifting towards the towering trees and shadowed peaks that loomed nearby, promising the challenge in the solitude she craved. The accountant was receding, the survivalist was preparing to emerge. With her new base established, the silent call of the Whispering Peaks grew louder, coalescing into a concrete plan, an extended solo journey deep into its embrace. The final days of June 2020 became a focused whirlwind of preparation. Elara Vance moved with the quiet efficiency of someone intimately familiar with the demands of self-reliance in the wild. There were checklists meticulously reviewed, gear laid out and inspected, her durable all-leather tent, the down-filled sleeping bag rated for temperatures well below freezing, water purification system, navigation tools, a comprehensive first aid kit. Nothing was left to chance. Food was carefully portioned, lightweight, high-energy rations designed for weeks off-grid, supplemented by the knowledge of edible plants she carried in her head. This wasn't just packing, it was ritual, a reaffirmation of the skills that defined her truest self. On June 26th, she made the call to her family, what remained of it, scattered across the country. Her voice, relayed through the crackle of the phone line, was bright, infused with an energy they hadn't heard in years. She spoke of needing this time, this immersion in nature, this profound solitude. Weeks, she told them, maybe longer. Don't worry. She painted a picture of peaceful retreat, a way to safely ride out the pandemic storm while reconnecting with the earth. She was skilled, she reminded them. Prepared. There was an undeniable enthusiasm, yet listening back later, would they recall a subtle undercurrent? A tremor of something absolute in her tone, a goodbye that felt heavier than a simple see you later? Hindsight often paints such shadows. At the moment, it just sounded like Elara, finally doing something that truly made her happy. Her vehicle, a sturdy, silver Subaru Forester that had seen its share of rough roads, was loaded with the same methodical care. Backpack secured, extra supplies tucked into waterproof containers, emergency gear accessible. Every item had its designated place, a testament to her experience. Then, with a final check of the small rented house in Pine Ridge County, she slid behind the wheel. The engine turned over, a familiar rumble in the quiet morning air. She navigated the paved roads leading out of the small town, the last vestiges of predictable civilization. Soon, asphalt gave way to gravel, the rhythmic crunch of tires a prelude to the deeper wilderness ahead. The gravel road narrowed further, becoming a bumpy, rutted dirt track that snaked aggressively upwards, demanding her full attention. Dust plumed behind the Forester, settling slowly on the dense undergrowth lining the path. Sunlight filtered weakly through the towering pines and firs, the air growing cooler, cleaner, scented with resin and damp earth. The sounds of the human world faded, replaced by the chatter of unseen birds and the low hum of the engine. Hours later, deeper now within the vast expanse of the Whispering Peaks National Forest than most casual visitors ever ventured, the track leveled out, opening unexpectedly onto a breathtaking vista. Serenity Meadow. It lived up to its name, at first glance. A wide, lush expanse of vibrant green, dotted with wildflowers, stretched before her, cradled by a dense ring of dark timber. Beyond the trees, the jagged, snow-dusted peaks of the higher mountains clawed at the sky. It looked like a landscape painter's dream. Perfect. Yet, Elara, scanning the perimeter, also noted the signs the untrained eye might miss, the faint game trails disappearing into the woods, the sheer remoteness of the location, the palpable sense of untamed nature. Beautiful, yes, but undeniably wild. Bears frequented these higher meadows. Mountain lions hunted these slopes. Help, if needed, was a long, long way off. But this was the challenge she sought, the environment her skills were honed for. This was where she felt most alive. She carefully maneuvered the Forester off the track, parking it under the cover of the treelines so as not to obstruct the narrow passage. Killing the engine, she was enveloped by a sudden, profound silence, broken only by the sighing wind. The weight of the expedition pack felt good on her shoulders, familiar and reassuring, as she locked the car and stepped out into the meadow proper. Her boots sank slightly into the soft earth. She surveyed the open space, her experienced eye assessing potential campsites, proximity to a clear stream trickling nearby, shelter from the prevailing wind, a flat, dry patch of ground. She chose a spot near the center, offering wide views yet close enough to the tree line for some protection. The process of setting up camp was fluid, economical. Tent poles clicked into place, canvas rising to form her small shelter against the wilderness. The sleeping bag was unrolled, its loft puffing up. Her small cooking stove and fuel were organized neatly on a flat rock. Each movement was deliberate, honed by years of practice. the sun began its slow descent towards the western peaks, casting long shadows across the meadow, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. As the last light faded, Elara sat by her small, crackling fire, the vastness of the whispering peaks surrounding her, the solitude complete. She had arrived. Alone, capable, seemingly content in the heart of the wild. A single, small point of human warmth against the immense, indifferent backdrop of nature. For 6 days, the Elara Vance's small camp sat undisturbed in the vast, quiet heart of Serenity Meadow. 6 days where the only sounds were the wind, the cry of distant hawks, and the crackle of her nightly fire. 6 days of the solitude she had so desperately sought. Then, on July 2nd, under a high summer sun, the silence was broken. 2 figures emerged from the dense treeline on the far side of the meadow, Ben and Chloe, a young couple on an ambitious multi-day trek through the Whispering Peaks National Forest. They were experienced hikers, comfortable in the backcountry, but Serenity Meadow's scale still took their breath away. As they traversed the open expanse, aiming for a pass on the opposite ridge, Ben pointed towards the center. Someone else had the same idea, he remarked, spotting the small dome tent, a tiny speck of color against the overwhelming green. Camping wasn't unusual here, though it was remote. They initially planned to give the site a wide berth, respecting the campers' solitude. But as they drew closer, maybe 100 yards out, an odd stillness registered. No smoke curled from a morning fire, no figure moved around the tent. Just silence. Chloe squinted. Something looks off about that tent, doesn't it? It seemed crumpled, listing awkwardly to one side. Curiosity piqued, mixed with a flicker of unease. Backcountry travelers learned to heed. They altered their course slightly, angling towards the campsite. The closer they got, the clearer the wrongness became. What they found wasn't just an unoccupied camp, it was a scene of utter chaos. The tent wasn't just collapsed, it looked like it had been slashed and stomped, fabric ripped, poles bent at unnatural angles. Nearby lay a backpack, violently disgorged of its contents. Unopened cans of food, lightweight packets of trail mix, maps, a compass, personal papers, even a paperback novel, all strewn haphazardly across the flattened grass as if someone, or something, had frantically searched through everything before discarding it with contempt. There were no large animal tracks immediately visible around the main debris field, no obvious signs of a bear rummaging for food. This felt different. More deliberate. More violent. Okay, this is seriously weird, Ben murmured, his voice low. Chloe scanned the surrounding trees, a prickle of fear running down her spine. Where's the camper? Did someone do this? They called out tentatively, hello? Anyone here? Only the wind answered. Sharing the look of alarm, they carefully documented the GPS coordinates, took a few quick photos with their phone, and retreated, moving much faster now, back towards the tree line and the long hike out to where they might find a signal. Hours later, back within range, their call reached the Pine Ridge Sheriff's Department. The report of an abandoned, destroyed campsite in such a remote area immediately raised flags. Deputy Miller, a veteran who knew the Whispering Peaks like the back of his hand, and his younger partner, Deputy Chin, geared up. Reaching Serenity Meadow took time, the final miles bumping along the same rough track Elara had driven. When they arrived, the scene was exactly as the hikers described. Disturbing. Miller surveyed the wreckage with a practiced eye. No animal did this, he stated flatly. The deputies began a meticulous search, carefully bagging items, photographing the scene from every angle. Amongst the scattered papers near the ruined tent, Chin found a driver's license tucked into a small wallet. The photo showed a woman with kind eyes and, strikingly, vibrant blue hair. Elara Vance. Age 54. The next step was the difficult one, contacting family. Elara's sister, located states away, answered the call. Her reaction to the news about the campsite was instantaneous, vehement. Shock quickly turned to disbelief, then absolute certainty. No. Absolutely not, she insisted, her voice trembling but firm. Elara would never leave a campsite like that. Never. She worshipped those woods, respected them. She packed out every scrap, buried her waste. She was meticulous. Someone else did this. Something happened to her. She confirmed Elara's plan for an extended solo trip, the call on June 26 filled with excitement about her adventure in the Whispering Peaks National Forest, and the fact that no one had heard from her since. The sister's conviction, coupled with the violence evident at the scene, erased any initial thoughts of Elara simply abandoning her gear. An official missing person report was filed immediately. What followed was a swift escalation. The Pine Ridge Sheriff's Department, aided by county search and rescue volunteers and K-9 units, launched a full-scale search operation centered on Serenity Meadow. They established a command post at the trailhead, coordinating teams that fanned out through the surrounding forest. Helicopters buzzed overhead, their rotors beating against the vast silence, scanning the dense terrain. Flyers bearing Elara Vance's picture, prominently featuring her distinctive blue hair, a deliberate choice made just before her trip, were distributed to trailheads and ranger stations. Surely, someone must have seen her. That flash of unnatural color against the natural palette. Yet, the first 48 hours of intensive searching yielded nothing. The dogs picked up scents around the campsite, but the trails quickly grew cold, dissipating into the confusing maze of game paths and thick undergrowth. No hikers reported seeing her after June 26. It was as if Elara Vance, after setting up her seemingly perfect camp, had simply evaporated into the thin mountain air, leaving behind only a scene of chilling violence and a growing, desperate silence. The wilderness held its secrets tightly, and the questions were only just beginning to multiply. Whispers in the wilderness, sightings and strange clues. The frantic, large-scale search of Serenity Meadow and its immediate surroundings yielded nothing but frustration. The forest floor, thick with pine needles and undergrowth, refused to give up a clear trail. Elara Vance, it seemed, had been swallowed whole by the Whispering Peaks National Forest, leaving behind only that violated campsite as a testament to her presence. Hope began to dwindle as days bled into the first week of July. And then, just as the investigation seemed poised to stall, the wilderness offered its first bizarre, unsettling whisper. On July 4th, Independence Day, another pair of hikers were cutting cross-country, navigating a ridgeline not far from the now infamous meadow. Rounding a dense thicket of manzanita, they stopped abruptly. Standing near the edge of a steep drop-off, partially obscured by shadow, was a woman. Alone. She wore a simple black t-shirt and blue jeans, startlingly inadequate for the rugged terrain. Her feet were bare, scratched and dirty on the rocky ground. A dark, ugly bruise bloomed on her left cheekbone. In her hair, it was an impossible shade of electric blue. The hikers slowed, calling out a tentative hello. The woman didn't turn. She didn't acknowledge them in any way. She simply stood there, motionless, gazing out towards the distant peaks as if waiting for something only she could see. There was no sign of distress, no wave for help, just an unnerving passivity, a profound disconnect from her surroundings. Unsettled by the strange encounter, the hikers continued on their way, discussing the odd woman they'd seen. It wasn't until they reached the trailhead later that day and saw the newly posted missing person flyers, featuring a photo of a smiling Elara Vance and a description highlighting her vibrant blue hair, that the chilling realization hit them. They immediately contacted the Pine Ridge Sheriff's Department. Deputy Miller and his team responded with renewed urgency, a surge of adrenaline cutting through the previous day's frustration. They converged on the area the hikers described, scouring the ridgeline, the slopes, the surrounding woods. But there was nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, no sign that the barefoot, blue-haired woman had ever been there. It was another dead end. The very next day, July 5th, brought another significant, and equally perplexing, discovery. A sheriff's department helicopter, methodically scanning the winding forest roads miles north of Serenity Meadow, spotted something unnatural nestled deep in a ravine. Ground teams were directed to the location. There, wedged against the base of a large pine after an apparent tumble down a steep embankment, was Elara Vance's silver Subaru Forester. The front end showed signs of impact, suggesting she might have hit a tree on the narrow road above before rolling off. Deputies cautiously approached the vehicle. Inside, There was no sign of Elara, and crucially, no significant amount of blood, suggesting any injuries from the crash itself might not have been catastrophic. But it was the scene outside the car that sent a fresh wave of unease through the investigators. Personal effects, clothing, maps, a different set of books, items clearly stored inside the vehicle, had been pulled out and scattered haphazardly across the forest floor around the wreck. It was eerily, disturbingly similar to the ransacked state of her campsite miles away. A violent, seemingly desperate search through her belongings. But for what? The prevailing theory among the deputies shifted slightly. Perhaps the crash, even if not bloody, had caused a significant head injury. Disorientation, impaired cognitive function, it could explain irrational behavior, wandering off, even rummaging through her own things without purpose. The possibility of foul play seemed less likely here. There were no signs of a struggle at the crash site itself. Still, the mirroring of the campsite chaos felt deeply wrong. Hoping Elara might return to the familiar anchor of her vehicle, authorities made the decision to leave it in place for the time being. They carefully placed a note inside the window. "Elara, we're looking for you. Please call this number. Your family misses you." A small plea cast into the vast, silent woods. The search now refocused around the crash site and the terrain leading north. Yet days turned into another week with no sign of the missing woman. Then, on July 12th, a search team pushing into an even more remote area, miles north of the crashed forest or near the edge of the designated wilderness area bordering a neighboring national park, found something else. Lying incongruously on the open ground near the shore of the isolated, trailless Whisper Lake was a sleeping bag. It appeared to have been used recently, and it belonged to Elara Vance. The discovery solidified the disturbing pattern: campsite, car crash, sleeping bag, a slow, steady, inexplicable northward path. How was she covering this brutal, steep terrain, presumably still barefoot and without essential gear? It made no sense. The area around Whisper Lake was searched exhaustively. Nothing. As July wore on, the sightings stopped. The clues dried up. The official search had to be scaled back, resources diverted. Hope became a fragile commodity. Then, on August 9th, weeks later, came the final reported sighting, perhaps the strangest of all. Two hunters were driving down a remote, seldom-used logging road several miles east of where the forester had been found. As they rounded a bend, they saw her. A woman leaning against a tree on the hillside above the road. Alone. No pack, no gear. She looked thinner, they later reported, gone even, but the distinctive blue hair was unmistakable. Yet, bizarrely, she was wearing different clothes entirely, denim overalls and a faded floral t-shirt. Where could those have possibly come from? They slowed their truck, calling out to her, asking if she needed help. She remained utterly still, unresponsive, her gaze fixed on something far beyond them. She offered no sign of recognition, distress, or need. Confused and a little spooked, the hunters continued on. Only later, upon seeing a flyer, did they realize who they'd likely seen and contacted the sheriff's department. Deputies rushed to the location. But like always, nothing. Elara Vance was gone. After this, the trail went completely, utterly cold. The strange sightings, the ransacked car, the northward path, the impossible clothing changes, it all added up to an unsolvable equation, a deepening mystery that left everyone involved grasping at shadows. The forest held its silence, and the whispers faded, leaving behind only a profound sense of unease and the terrifying possibility that Elara Vance might never be found. The boy who saw a haunting encounter on Shut-Eye Peak. The confusing trail of sightings and clues finally evaporated into the thin mountain air after August 2020. Elara Vance's case grew cold, filed away under the heavy weight of the unknown. Weeks turned into months. Seasons changed over the Whispering Peaks National Forest. Snows fell and melted. For Elara's family, the silence was agonizing, a gaping wound that refused to heal. For the investigators at the Pine Ridge Sheriff's Department, it became a frustrating enigma, a local mystery whispered about with a shake of the head. It seemed the forest had claimed its secret, burying Elara Vance beneath layers of time and unanswered questions. Until almost exactly a year later. On Wednesday, July 21st, 2021, the Corbin family, Mark, Sarah, and their 3 young children, were enjoying a summer adventure. They were bumping along a steep, winding Forest Service road in their sturdy off-road vehicle, heading towards the panoramic summit of Raven's Roost Mountain. Located miles south of Serenity Meadow where Elara's ordeal began, Raven's Roost was a popular destination known for its stunning views across the vast wilderness. They'd planned a day of hiking and picnicking, an escape into the beauty of the Whispering Peaks. About halfway up the rough track, however, the familiar chorus began from the back seat. The kids were getting hungry and restless. Mark glanced at Sarah. "Find a spot to pull over soon?" Sarah nodded, scanning the roadside. As luck would have it, the road soon leveled briefly, opening onto a small, sun-dappled meadow bordered by tall pines. Perfect. Mark eased the vehicle onto the shoulder, turning off the engine. The sudden quiet was filled with the buzz of insects and the distant sound of birdsong. As Mark and Sarah started gathering snacks and drinks from the back, preparing for their impromptu picnic, they became aware of a small voice. Their youngest, 3-year-old Leo, sitting by the open rear window, was talking. Not babbling to himself, not chatting with his older siblings, but engaged in what sounded like an earnest, one-sided conversation. His attention was fixed entirely outside the vehicle, directed towards the dense line of trees at the edge of the small meadow. Mark and Sarah exchanged a puzzled look, then followed Leo's gaze. They saw nothing but trees, shadows, and patches of sunlight. "Who are you talking to, Leo buddy?" Mark asked gently. Leo turned from the window, his expression serious. "The lady," he stated simply, pointing a small finger towards the woods. "She's over there." Mark and Sarah looked again, scanning the trees more intently this time. "Nothing. Just the forest." "Honey, there's no one there," Sarah said softly, assuming it was just an imaginary friend, a common face. But Leo became agitated, his voice rising with childish insistence. "Yes, there is. She needs help. You gotta trust me." He pointed again, more emphatically this time, towards a specific spot maybe 20 yards into the trees. "She needs help." The sheer conviction in his voice sent a sudden, unexpected chill down Sarah's spine. Before she could respond, Leo delivered the words that would haunt them. She fell down. Face in the dirt. He paused, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Her legs are stuck up weird." Then, his voice dropping to an almost matter-of-fact whisper, "She's dead, Mommy." The air in the car grew thick and cold. Imaginary friend? This felt terrifyingly specific. Mark, reacting on pure instinct in a surge of adrenaline, threw open his door. "Stay here," he ordered Sarah, his voice tight, before plunging into the trees towards the spot Leo indicated. He pushed through branches, eyes scanning frantically, calling out. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No sign of disturbed ground, no broken foliage, no person living or dead. While Mark searched, Leo, back in the car, kept pointing, providing a chilling play-by-play to his unseen conversationalist. Mark returned to the vehicle moments later, pale and unnerved. "There's nothing there, Sarah. Absolutely nothing." He glanced back at his son, who was still staring intently out the window. The picnic forgotten, a shared sense of horror settled over them. They quickly buckled everyone in, turned the vehicle around, and drove away from the little meadow much faster than they had arrived. That night, safe at home but unable to shake the deep unease, Sarah recounted the disturbing incident on her social media page. She described Leo's strange conversation, his insistence, and repeated his chillingly specific description of the woman he claimed to see, face down, legs twisted, dead. And she included the details Leo had offered about the woman's appearance. She had blue hair, a black shirt, and blue jeans. It wasn't long before her post came to the attention of the Pine Ridge Sheriff's Department. The description, blue hair, black shirt, blue jeans, instantly resonated. It perfectly matched the first, bizarre sighting of Elara Vance near Serenity Meadow the previous July. Could it be possible? Deputy Miller contacted the Corbin family immediately. The next day, deputies met with them, treating the situation with sensitivity but clear purpose. They presented Leo with a carefully prepared photo lineup, several pictures of different women. Without any prompting, just a simple request to point out the lady from the woods if he saw her, Leo studied the photos. Then, his small finger decisively tapped on 3 separate pictures. All 3 were photos of Elara Vance. Armed with this incredible, unsettling identification, deputies returned to the meadow on Raven's Roost Mountain with Mark and Leo. Leo, once again, pointed directly to the same spot in the trees. Search teams conducted an exhaustive grid search of the area. They brought in cadaver dogs again. They examined every inch of ground. And again, like every search connected to Elara Vance, they found absolutely nothing. No physical evidence corroborated the 3-year-old's chillingly accurate vision. The mystery of Elara Vance, once cold, was suddenly reignited, but now infused with a potentially paranormal element that defied all logical investigation. Was Leo Corbin's encounter a glimpse across the veil? A figment of imagination tapping into a real tragedy? Or something else entirely? The forest offered no answers, only deeper, more unsettling questions. And so, the investigation, reignited by the chilling testimony of young Leo Corbin, ultimately found itself back at a familiar impasse. The final search of the Raven's Roost Meadow yielded nothing tangible, adding another layer of the inexplicable to an already baffling case. The account of a 3-year-old boy, identifying a missing woman he'd never met from a photograph after describing her deceased form in details matching an earlier sighting. It stretched the boundaries of credulity, yet it couldn't be entirely dismissed. It became the final, haunting echo in the already profound silence surrounding Elara Vance's disappearance. Years have passed since Elara walked into Serenity Meadow. Today, she remains a missing person. Her fate, swallowed by the vastness of the Whispering Peaks National Forest, is unknown. The narrative of her disappearance isn't a straight line but a fractured mosaic of contradictory clues and unsettling encounters. We are left with fragments, the image of an experienced wilderness survivalist seeking solitude amidst a global pandemic, the jarring violence of her destroyed campsite and ransacked car, suggesting a frantic search or a brutal encounter, the perplexing sightings of a woman who matched her description but seemed utterly lost within herself, barefoot, bruised, sometimes wearing clothes she couldn't possibly possess, unresponsive to those who tried to help, the illogical northward progression. Through miles of punishing terrain, and finally, the inexplicable vision described by Leo Corbin on Raven's Roost Mountain. None of it truly adds up. The unanswered questions stack higher than the peaks themselves. What truly happened in Serenity Meadow during those first 6 days? Was Elara the victim of foul play, encountering someone dangerous in that isolated place? Or did a medical emergency, perhaps the crash itself, trigger a state of delirium, leading her to wander and behave irrationally? Could she, for reasons known only to her, have orchestrated her own disappearance, staging the chaos to throw off pursuit? If so, why the subsequent sightings, the apparent vulnerability? How does one explain the changing clothes, the barefoot trek, the passive demeanor so contrary to her known competence? And what are we to make of Leo Corbin's account, a paranormal glimpse across the veil, a child's potent imagination somehow latching onto the psychic residue of a tragedy, or something stranger still? For the Pine Ridge Sheriff's Department, the Elara Vance case remains stubbornly open, an unsolved mystery filed under suspicious circumstances, a frustrating testament to the limits of investigation when faced with the truly inexplicable. For her family, the lack of resolution is a persistent ache, a limbo of grief suspended by the thinnest thread of hope, however improbable. The ambiguity is perhaps the most haunting aspect of all. There are no easy answers here, no neat conclusions to package away the unease. Speculation circles endlessly, but the truth remains elusive, guarded fiercely by the wilderness. The Whispering Peaks National Forest continues its cycle of seasons, its immense beauty untouched, indifferent. But for those who know the story, the silence feels different now, heavier, imbued with the enduring mystery of Elara Vance. Her disappearance serves as a stark reminder that the wild places hold secrets we may never unravel, and that sometimes, the most logical explanations fall short, leaving us standing at the edge of the unknown, listening for an echo in the wilderness that never quite fades away.